It appears that our Supreme Court, well, by and large, until recently, focused on Amendment 1. Not so sure about that next one. Then 3 through 8 were okay. Recently, they rediscovered the Second Amendment. 9th and 10th are still historical curiosities. Well, I wanted to list the enumerated powers, so if you looked through it, let me say one more thing before we go to my example. This is P.J. O'Rourke, the humorist. Now, this was written some time ago, so it's kind of dated. Majority rule is a precious, sacred thing worth dying for. But like other precious, sacred things, such as the home and the family, it's not only worth dying for, it can make you wish you were dead. Imagine if all of life were determined by majority rule. Every meal would be a pizza. Every pair of pants, even those in a Brooks Brothers suit, would be stonewashed denim. Celebrity diets and exercise books were the only thing on the shelves. And since women are a majority of the population, we'd all be married to Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson perhaps is a little bit dated. It might very well now be Ashton Kutcher. But still, he's cute, don't get me wrong. I have to say, I did this, I gave this talk once, it's like, not an old folks home, a retirement community. I gave this talk at a retirement community. And there was this elderly woman who had barely moved, sitting in the front row in a wheelchair. And I started to go to the next slide, and she says, "Leave it up." So Ashton at least woke her up for a minute. Got the heart beating. Well, what should government be allowed to do? That's the question I think we've lost sight of. Not what should we be allowed to do? What should government be allowed to do? Democracy is not very good at asking that question because it assumes there's a we. The question is, what should government be allowed to do? The theme of the U.S. Constitution is, what should the government be allowed to do? That's what enumerated powers mean. Here are some things that government should do. We're going to list them. All others, not so much. How large a share of national product should be available for political disposition? That is, what's the boundary again between what is mine and what is ours? A lot of our disputes, a lot of our focus is on, we're mad at our neighbors as individuals. Neighbor comes over in the middle of the night, you have a video camera, and he puts his foot across it. He goes, "Ha ha ha, I stepped on your lawn. And I can prove it, he stepped on my lawn, I'm going to arrest him." We don't care about that. We may care about a city using involuntary annexation to say, this is now part of a city, and it didn't used to be. People who live out in the country, they don't wake up one morning and think, "Darn it, I meant to live in town and I forgot." I had a list of stuff and it just slipped my mind. So I'm still living outside of town. Fortunately though, the city has your best interest at heart. And they can annex your property against your will, without your consent, because North Carolina is one of only 7 states that allows involuntary annexation. So it's still your property, except now it's our property. That line between what is mine and what is ours, I can't find it. Well, rather than go through the 2-hour example I was going to do next, let me just take questions, and I am happy to talk more with people at the end. This last slide that we're looking at here, the question that James Buchanan asks, and the question that the public choice approach takes is, what powers should be granted to the government? And what kind of institutions or rules can we design to limit government to only those actions and only those powers? I think that's what political science is about. That's what interests me about political science. So the thing that I want to leave you with, not the picture of Ashton Kutcher. That may stay, but what I want to leave you with is your own thoughts about that dividing line. How is it that we as a nation conceive and defend the line between what is mine and what is ours? Because otherwise we have the problem that Rousseau raises. That which I thought to be the general will was not so, and I was mistaken. I don't get to make my own choices. The American system of government was designed explicitly to prevent that form of democracy. That form of democracy is not a ghost. It's not something that somebody's making up. It is present in our country, and it is expanding. So that's what I want you to take away from this, and thank you for listening. And it's time for questions. Help me out here. Sir?
What would you say to somebody who says that we need government to take care of us? We need the government. It's a necessary evil. How would you, what would you say to something to the effect of when people say that government might be too big, but we need them to defend us?
Well, the list of enumerated powers is not zero. I want a government small enough to fit inside the Constitution. Our government is considerably larger than that. So saying that we need some government, the problem with that is once we say we need some government and we say, all right, we are going to decide, we're not saying what powers are we going to give government, we're saying what powers are we going to leave with the people. Right? I guess I want to advocate a completely different approach. Most of us are willing to agree. We need some government. Maybe a considerable amount, of a reasonably large size. How are we going to limit it to only that? That's something I think is a nonpartisan question. Many people on the left are worried about the Patriot Act, the war, a number of things that they think are incursions of government into their private lives. They think they should be able to marry who they want. They think they should be able to use drugs. So people on the left are worried about it. But they say, no, we need government to do these other things. People on the right want to have the economy. They want to have their economic lives. But there's a bunch of other things they think that government should do. Thomas Jefferson said, a government large enough to give you what you want is powerful enough to take everything that you have. You have to think, how can we limit it to only those things that we all agree? Not that some of us want, but that we all agree. You have to look at the intersection. What we take instead is the union. Everything that anybody wants government to do, it should do. Now, I found that in campaigning. I'm a libertarian, so I'll talk about my libertarian platform. And people will say, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how are you going to reduce the cost of health care? I don't know. I know that if we had more competition, if we had more physicians' assistants, if we had fewer restrictions on licensing that are basically entry barriers that raise prices, I know if we had more competition in drugs, that might reduce prices. But if you ask what the government is going to do to reduce prices, what you want me to do is take money from other people and give it to you. That doesn't reduce prices. The French economist Frédéric Bastiat said the state is the fiction by which each of us can aspire to live at the expense of all of us. Doesn't add up. I'm going to take money from everybody and give everybody back more than I took. Wouldn't that be something? And yet that's what people want. If they say they want free health care, what they mean is, I'm going to pay for yours, you're going to pay for his, and he's going to pay for mine. None of us have any reason to care about how much the quality of the care. It goes out of control because mine is free. I want as much as I can get because she's paying for it. The way to reduce health care is put people in charge of their own lives, make them responsible for their own health, and then use insurance for catastrophic things. Not say health care should be free because it's a fundamental right. I don't understand what free health care for everybody means. It costs a ton. The question is who's going to pay for it, not how to make it free. That'll teach you all to answer a question. That was like a 10-minute answer to your question. I'm sorry. But I don't blame you now if nobody else asks. But.